Thank you. So, good morning or good afternoon and welcome to the participants of today's Informational Rx-360 webinar. My name is Hubertus Voltmann. I'm working at BASF's Business Unit Pharma Ingredients and Services. Among other tasks, I'm representing this business unit in various associations, for example, Rx-360. So why is my company supporting Rx-360? As you all know, pharmaceutical manufacturers and suppliers are hardly in the position to fulfill all audit requirements and requests. BASF as a supplier supports Rx-360 because this industry consortium offers an efficient way to cope with current and future audit challenges without compromising product safety. It is the second informational Rx-360 webinar of this type, and the purpose is to inform those who are interested in Rx-360 what Rx-360 is all about, how it works, what the benefits of a membership are, and of course to answer questions right after the presentation. So what is the agenda? You will get an overview on Rx-360 and how it is structured, what the tasks of the working groups and committees are and how they work. You will hear how Rx-360 informs its members via alerts and an up-to-date website. But it does not only inform members, but also a broad group of interested people via the website. After the presentation, you will have the opportunity to raise questions. Then a couple of words referring to the housekeeping. All lines will be placed on mute by the operator until the end of the presentation. The questions and answers session will take place on the live meeting after the presentation, and then the phones will be opened up. Presentations and audio will be available on the website after the call. Before starting, we should continue with the introduction of the panelists. So far, I introduced myself, and Wes, would you like to continue?
Hi, Bertus. It's Wes Schmidt. I'm the Senior Director of Quality Systems for AbbVie, the newly branded pharmaceutical company recently spun off from Abbott. Like Bertus, our company finds Rx-360 as a very important consortium for two reasons. We have access to the highest quality supplier audits. Secondly, we have access to the latest information on supply chain security. I'll pass it to Darcy.
Hi, my name is Darcy Ewald. I'm the Director of Auditing at Merck Sharp & Dohme. Like the previous presenters, we really share the same enthusiasm for Rx-360. So it's a wonderful supplement to the internal auditing program that we have right now, and we realize just great benefits for the rapid communication as well as the work with the supply chain security given industry news that's occurred in the past few years. Okay, and then Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tim Chessboard. I work for AstraZeneca. I'm based in the UK. I'm part of AstraZeneca's Global Product Security Group. I have particular responsibilities for supply chain integrity and supply chain security. So I'm part of the Rx-360 supply chain security steering group. I have been for the last 12 months. I've certainly seen that this group is really starting to set the agenda in this area and is providing these forums to discuss these kinds of topics and how the industry can work together to drive up and improve standards in terms of security and robustness in that supply chain.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We continue with the introduction, and please read the statement from Guy Villax. Guy is the CEO of Hovione, and as far as I know, Hovione was one of the first companies joining Rx-360, and Guy himself is one of the first who supported this industry association. Please read its command. I think I do not need to say anything about it. Okay. So the next page answers how all this starts, and you can see newspaper cuttings which refer to severely injured or even dead patients after intake of adulterated medicines. In all these cases seen on this page, the alterations were pure criminal acts. These cases make very clear the need for collaboration among the industry in order to prevent such incidences in the future. The next slide indicates what the Rx-360 mission is, and I think that is what I have to read. The mission is to protect patient safety by sharing information and developing processes related to the integrity of the healthcare supply chain and the quality of materials within the supply chain. Below, you see the image of Lynn Byers from JSK, and Lynn has been the past chair of Rx-360, who explains why GSK benefits from Rx-360. The next slide explains well what Rx-360 does. Exchange public information to allow firms to adopt best practices across the industry, bring industry experts together to develop responses and action when the supply chain is threatened, act as a clearinghouse for suspicious supply chain information, share individual audits and conduct joint audits, consider joint technological development for securing supply chain and detecting adulteration. This is a very brief summary of what the association does. On the website you have a much more comprehensive one from the view of patients, from the view of pharmaceutical manufacturers, from their suppliers, and so on. Yeah, what is the operating model of Rx-360? It is a non-for-profit organization according to the US law. The members are companies, not individuals. It is not intended to place anything, regulations or authorities or controlling bodies, whatever. To comply with competition law is taken very seriously. This is necessary whenever companies that act in the same class of business form an industry consortium. And now, after having done the introduction, I would like to hand over to Wes again.
Okay, thanks, Hubertus. I'm going to talk about membership and how we're organized from a board and working group structure. I'll let you read a comment here from Janice Berman, who's the Vice President from Takeda, as she details the importance of the consortium membership in light of the Japan earthquake and the Japan Supply Working Group that was set up. It really helped us get our heads around what we need to do together. So the members of Rx-360 are broad and inclusive, and we've said repeatedly there's room for everybody within the consortium. We have small and large companies, suppliers, manufacturers, branded, generic. We have medical device manufacturers. In fact, last week we had our first big meeting on strategy behind adding more medical device manufacturing issues to Rx-360. It is global. We have meetings around the world. We are expanding into Asia as a key strategy in 2013. And we have regulatory agencies that have joined us I'll show you a slide later on of the companies that have joined us. We're not permitted to show the regulatory agencies publicly that have joined us, but just suffice to say that we have a great interest in the regulatory agencies participating as observers, and also to ask us to help them put together things like what does the typical supply chain look like for a large pharmaceutical manufacturer. They found us very valuable in gaining some information in general about our industry. This is the membership, and as I mentioned before, under the observer category, we are not allowed to list the external regulatory agencies, but you can see that we have pharma and medical device manufacturers and suppliers. We have observers, which consists of auditors and associations. Over the years, our membership and our observer participation continues to rise. You can see we've got a nice increase in the number of companies as they see the benefit in joining our consortium. And we have targets for membership in 2013 and beyond. And we're definitely looking forward to speaking with you individually or after this call to determine your interest level. One of the questions asked typically is, what does it cost? Because, it's based on, cost of Rx-360 is based on, it's really what you're going to get out of it in return. So if you're a large finished product manufacturer, you're going to pay more in terms of dues than a smaller finished product manufacturer. And you can see the difference. Dues are set at approximately $30,000 US per year for large and $12,000 per year for small. Contract finished product manufactured, the dues are set as well at $12,000 USD per year. If you're a supplier, $6,000, and if you're a supplier of services, it's just $6,000 as well. But again, based on this fee structure, it's really no matter whether you're large, small, supplier, service provider, you can really get a lot out of Rx-360 by utilizing the audit program and utilizing the supply chain security information. So I'll let you read the comment from Raj, who's the president of Arch Pharma Labs Limited in India, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the structure that we have in place. This is a busy slide, but it's I will simplify it by saying that Rx-360 is really divided into three main work streams. On the far left, it's the audit operations work stream. And you can see one of our speakers, Darcy, is in charge of the audit operations team, one of the co-leaders in there. Earlier on the call, Tim Chessboard mentioned that he was on the supply chain security committee, which is another work stream that you see in the middle. And then on the far right side, you see an external and regulatory affairs group with the membership committee, the observers, etc. You can see what I mentioned before was that we're targeting an Asia working group as one of our main objectives this year. On the far right side on the bottom, you can see that falls under the external and regulatory affairs section. Overriding everything and providing governance and oversight for the committees and the work streams are the board of directors. And you can see that our current chair, who just assumed the role in 2013, is Brian Johnson, and he's the head of supply chain security at Pfizer. Our vice chair is Guy, who you saw a picture of earlier on, and the treasurer is Martin Ventress, who's really the founder of Rx-360. So depending on your interest level, you can see there's a lot of opportunity to get involved in very many different things, whether you're an IT expert, you have database activities going on in the audit operations team, whether you're a supply chain security person, whether you're interested in participating in a procurement group pilot that we have going. There are many, many, many opportunities depending on your skill set, depending on your interest level, depending on what your company wants to get out of it. So right now for 2013, each one of these work streams has very specific goals and very specific targets that we want to accomplish together. We're going to make a lot of progress across all three of these work streams. I'd like to pass it now over to Darcy Ewald to talk about the audit programs.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Wes. So you'll see the next slide. There are two testimonials, one from Wes, who just spoke to us, and then one from Dr. Fent. So I'll just give you a minute to read through the testimonials that they provided. And then we can go on to the next slide. So Rx-360 audit programs. Sharing supplier audits can increase compliance, quality, and efficiency. And within Rx-360, there are really two separate auditing programs. The first we refer to as joint audits, and these are audits that are initiated by the consortium based on input from members. The second audit program is referred to as Audit Sharing, and that uses audit reports from a member company that are redacted and placed into a secure database for member access. The benefit really of the joint audits is that numerous 1- or 2-day audits of a supplier will be replaced by fewer, more thorough Rx-360 joint audits, thus eliminating audit fatigue. And that's obviously important, not just from the pharmaceutical manufacturer perspective, but also from the supplier or manufacturer perspective. If we go on to the next slide, this just gives a brief overview of the audit sharing concept. So you can share reports and responses from audits conducted by individual member companies. So these audits are not conducted through Rx-360, but for example, if Merck performed an audit at a supplier, provided we get the input and the agreement from the supplier, we can share the report and the responses of the audit that we performed at a particular supplier. The companies then have an opportunity to purchase that audit. So they really decide individually how to use the information in the audit report or response. So again, for example, if Merck was looking to do new business with a particular supplier, we may opt to purchase a shared audit report just to understand a little bit about the manufacturing and the compliance background of that particular manufacturer, of that particular supplier, before we start down the audit or the supplier approval process. Suppliers do have the ability to exclude specific companies, for example, if it's a competitor, from viewing the audit report and responses. And then suppliers can also vet new members joining Rx-360 who have requested access to a shared audit report. So again, just summary that the audit sharing concept is really the member pharmaceutical company has performed an audit with agreement from the supplier. They can redact it and put it into a database. And then, with the appropriate approvals, other member companies are able to view that audit report. If we go on to slide 19, this slide talks about the joint audit concept. So in this program, audits are sponsored and conducted by Rx-360 on behalf of consortium members. So a pharmaceutical company, if there are 3 different companies that need an audit of the same supplier, we really have the ability to join forces and have 1 audit performed instead of 3 at that supplier. Rx-360 reviews and hires the audit service provider companies to conduct the audit, and we have some preset standards and requirements for those auditors to be considered to do the audit by Rx-360. Again, the suppliers can exclude specific companies, for example, competitors, from viewing the audit report. And then suppliers can vet new members joining Rx-360 who have requested to purchase the joint audit report, or non-members who have requested purchase of a joint audit report. So again, the benefit here is that, from a pharmaceutical perspective, a manufacturer perspective, we have the ability to potentially join forces with other pharmaceutical members or distributors to have 1 audit performed, and then the supplier can really realize benefit from receiving 1 audit instead of multiple throughout the year. If we go on to slide 20, from a joint audit perspective, we talk a little bit about the observation. So the way that Rx-360 works for the joint audits is that there are 2 different categories for the observations. They're either potentially critical or they're classified as other. For potentially critical, it's a deficiency that indicates a critical system failure that may pose an immediate risk to patient safety or health, or may result in adverse impact to the safety, identity, strength, or purity of a product. The potentially critical observation should be objectively verifiable based on documentation, facts, and observations. And then each company needs to assess the observation for criticality with respect to their product or process. That is communicated to Rx-360 within 24 hours of the potentially critical observation being recognized at a supplier, and then obviously communicated to the sponsor companies who are involved in that audit. And then other is a deficiency against the Rx-360 standards and guidelines, but that are not potentially critical. So again, that's how we handle the observation piece for the joint audit. If we go on to slide 21, we can talk about the guidelines, standards, and audit guides. And again, this is a real nice benefit for the receiver of the audit as well. Just knowing exactly what the expectations are for the audit. So we do have guidelines and standards for API and registered intermediates. We have a guideline and audit guide that was adopted ICH Q7, and there's some additional TSD, BSD text. For supply chain security, we have an audit guide based on review of the CTPAT guidelines and internal company guidelines and practices. For excipients, we use the EXIPAC GMP or standard for excipients, and the audit guide is based on that standard. Basic chemicals and raw materials, audit guide is based on IPEC QG excipient audit guide and draft standard. And then for packaging and printed materials, it's ISO 15378. And the audit group is looking to see what additional guidelines or audit guides we want to develop to support the increased auditing needs of the manufacturers. If we go on to slide 22, this talks a little bit more about the selection of auditors. So again, Rx-360 will only consider auditor service provider firms to conduct joint audits. Firms provide oversight and internal selection process and standard of quality. Auditing firms are able to register via the Rx-360 website. The Rx-360 coordinator will then request bids from the registered firms for the cost of conducting the audit. Rx-360 Audit Operations Working Group will review the bids and the qualifications. So there's a comparison of the qualifications against the Rx-360 minimum requirements for auditors. And then we review against the expertise of the working group members to make final selections of the auditors. So again, there's standardization of the qualifications that we expect from anyone performing an audit for Rx-360. If we go on to slide 23, joint audit reports are available to non-sponsor members and non-members for a fee. So there's a link here that shows the audit reports that are available for purchase. So for example, if an audit by Rx-360 had been performed and a sponsor company joins the consortia in 2013 or has a need for an audit to be performed, they can see what audit reports are available for purchase and potentially purchase that audit report for use within their company. Shared audit reports are freely available to member report contributors. Members who have not contributed reports must pay a fee for access to individual reports. So this really encourages suppliers and the pharmaceutical manufacturers to work to get the audit reports into the shared audit program. Again, there's really valuable information that can be gleaned from the audit report that can be used by either non-members or members. And then I think the last slide just talks about some testimonials. And so you'll see Martin Van Treest from Amgen says that at Amgen they've already seen significant benefit from sharing audit information. They fully support the program such that Amgen waives the audit of any supplier that has successfully completed an Rx-360 audit. So that's just a very strong and important statement to be made by such a key part of the pharmaceutical industry. From a supplier perspective, Sigma Aldrich, you see that Tom Neal says that they will save 20 to 30,000 this year, with a potential of 20 to 150,000 on vendor audits, and then 40 to 50,000 on customer audits by 2015. The recognition not just by the pharmaceutical manufacturers, but also, the suppliers and source manufacturers of the benefit of Rx-360. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Tim Chessboard, who's going to go through the supply chain security activities.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll just take a few moments to talk about of the three work streams. The second one is around looking at supply chain security and how we can work collectively to improve supply chain security. So as Brian says in that quote there, from his point of view, and I would agree with him on this, it's really the only organisation that's working at a global level to try and improve supply chain security in a holistic manner. So it's looking at all the different elements of supply chain security. Auditing has been mentioned by the previous presenter, but we're also moving that on now to saying how can we share relevant information, how can we develop best practices, and also in certain instances, how do we respond to events like the tsunami in Japan, for example, which I'll touch on in one of the later slides. But certainly what I see is I work quite a lot with my enforcement colleagues, and they share a lot of information with each other and intelligence and such like through the Pharmaceutical Security Institute. And I can see that Rx-360, this particular group, is almost becoming an equivalent group to that is sharing information on supply chains and how we can improve supply chains on the preventative side rather than on the investigative and enforcement side. So it's a very important group. So if we go on to the next slide, what have we actually delivered so far? So the group hasn't been in existence for that long. It's probably no more than about 18 months or so, perhaps getting towards 2 years, but not a long time been formed. But during the course of last year, we delivered 4 white papers that you can see listed on the screen in front of you, covering various key elements of supply chain security. So if we start with the first one, which is around management systems, we shared a lot of information between the member companies about where we were with our systems, and we pulled that information together to describe, for those who are looking to put a system in place, what would it look like? What are the key elements that you need to have? And then the second element that was looked at by another group was about conveyance risk management. So this was a group that I was part of. It was focused on looking at the particular issue of theft, and how that is a big challenge to our industry and is growing, and how we can develop models to analyse the risks of our supply chain and put the appropriate mitigations in place. The third group then looked at market monitoring. So how should we be looking out there proactively to monitor what's happening? What are the best techniques for doing this, particularly thinking about emerging technologies. The internet now is becoming a very important vehicle for the transmission of the legally diverted medicines and counterfeit medicines. So it's how do we get a better handle on that, and what should be people planning to do in this area. And then the fourth one was the audits and assessments of third parties. So a kind of points to consider document that should be used when looking at third party, logistics service partners in particular. So all 4 of those were resulting in white papers that were published, and then we held webinars similar to this one to publicise the work that had been done and to answer questions from whoever wanted to participate. Moving forward then into other things. I mentioned the Japan Supply Chain Working Group. So this is something that was set up specifically as a response to the tsunami in Japan. To do a lot of good work, bringing people together, sharing information, sharing the way that the risks were assessed. Lots of regulatory information was shared. So it really helped us to respond as an industry in an effective way to this particular challenge that obviously no one could have foresaw, but the response was significantly helped by working together in this way. The other thing I wanted to highlight was the collaborative approach that we're taking within the supply chain security group. So it's reaching out to other similar bodies who have activities in this area. So some of these are highlighted on this slide here. So as recently as last week, there was a joint symposium that was organised between Rx-360 and PCSC, that was hosted by Bristol Myers Squibb in the US. Very successful symposium, but I didn't go myself, but I've spoken to people who were there and said it was a really, really useful forum. So it's showing that we're working together to drive this agenda forward. Then working with pharma in the US around sort of points to consider white paper, supply chain security, supply chain integrity. Going across the other side of the Atlantic, where we're trying to reach out to Brexit and to what's happening in the European Union. Things like the Falsified Medicines Directive are coming, and how do we respond effectively to those challenges. And then also looking further afield into Asia. I just mentioned earlier, Asia-Pac is an area that we need to do much more connection work into, understanding the challenges over there, because as individual companies we're facing a lot of threats in that part of the world, and we really need to do a lot more collectively to have an impact. If we go to the final slide then just to show what are we working on right now as the working groups. So there's 4 working groups that are actually looking at the areas you can see there. So the first one is focused on illegal diversion, which is a problem that is definitely growing, and each company with it is being impacted by it. So this one is a case of it's an issue that doesn't perhaps get as much press attention as counterfeiting, but nevertheless presents a significant threat to patient safety, and a lot more needs to be done in this area, which we're trying to establish what best practice looks like. Then the other groups are looking at incident management. How do we make sure that incidents are effectively reported, both internally, and then so we're in a good place to report things through to regulatory bodies and others as is necessary. Serialization is a very important topic, so the third element here. There's lots and lots of impending serialization requirements that are coming down. I mentioned the Falsified Medicines Directive. There's also things happening in the US with the Californian pedigree requirements. So there's a group there that's sharing information around these various things that are happening globally, and how can we learn from one another. And the final group is looking at drug shortages and the impact that has on the integrity of supply chains. So when things are in short supply, you can often see that criminal elements will try to manipulate that to their advantage. So how do we become more aware of that, and how do we mitigate that effectively? So that's all I wanted to say on supply chain security. So I'll hand over for the last section, talking about external relations and regulatory affairs.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Yeah, we talked about the Audit Operations Group now, the Supply Chain Security Committee, and now we are coming to the third work stream of Rx-360. This is the External Relations and Regulatory Affairs Group. Since the beginning of Rx-360, Rx-360 has endeavored to facilitate constructive relationships with regulators around the world and keep them informed of Rx-360's activities. It is very important to align with the regulatory bodies in order to get the necessary acceptance for our activities. The Rx-360 External Relations Group coordinates public communications and strives to enhance the visibility of Rx-360 activities, like we do with today's webinar. Rx-360 has a vibrant monitoring and reporting working group that tracks key regulatory, policy, and legislative developments relevant to the supply chain security and prepares timely reports that are posted on Rx-360's public website. And now, coming to that website, what you see is only a very short snapshot of the website, but in fact it is a huge pool of information which includes everything you need to know about Rx-360. It includes alerts, flash reports, newsletters, announcement of events, daily supply chain news, and important links and many things more. What you can get on the website, you can classify into categories like education, regulation, guidance, alert, announcement, and legislation. Only few parts of the website information is accessible for members only. I mentioned already alerts, and when coming to page 37, you see just an example, but this is really just an example. The alerts are usually information relevant for the supply safety. For example, in the past or in the recent past, we had information about the Hurricane Sandy and impact on supply chain, potential heparin shortage, toxins found in glycerin, counterfeit products that occurred in the market, fake gelatin capsules, just to name a few. Very important is if you go to the website, if you sign up, you will get the alerts free of charge as emails. One information as an example, what you can get from the website is what you see on page 33. It's an announcement of an upcoming webinar of interest, Rx-360 webinar on the requirements to import APIs into Europe as part of the Falsified Medicines Directive. So far, we heard several times today the Falsified Medicines Directive. That means this is a hot topic, and it will bring quite some new things with it, which are under discussion. And as you can see, Rx-360 takes up this very up-to-date information, and in webinars they give guidance how to deal with that. Yeah, now you have heard about the different work streams of Rx-360. What are the benefits of being a member in that association? Rapidly disseminate supply chain and quality information, identify issues and develop responses when the supply chain is threatened, act as a clearinghouse for suspicious supply chain information, share individual audits and conduct joint audits. So this is really saving a lot of manpower and cost, as we had heard in different testimonials. Consider joint technological development for securing supply chain and detecting adulteration. Work with regulators to solve problems. This is what says this page, but as you have seen from the structure, there are different committees, working groups, and of course these are free to join, and by doing so you get really up-to-date information from colleagues and how they deal with issues and upcoming new legislation and so on and so on. So this is really something which helps you to stay up to date. Yeah, we are coming to the end of the presentation, and slide number 35 gives you an information where to, who to contact in case even after the Q&A session you should have still questions which have not been answered today. There is first the Rx-360 Secretariat at Drinker, Biddle and Rees with an email given and a phone number, and of course you can contact today's presenters and the email addresses are given there. On the next and last page you can see an Rx-360 advertisement, and this advertisement is of course designed to gain new members, and in the upper part of the advertisement you see the logos of many of the members. I think not all of the members have given yet the allowance to use the logo, but this is only a question of time, and the number of logos given here is increasing steadily. And I think, yeah, we are, let's say, at the end of the presentation phase, and now I guess we start with the question and answer session, right? Didi?
Yes, is Sarah on? Can she open up the lines?
Certainly.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question over the telephone, please press *1 on your phone. Your line will, a voice prompt on your phone will indicate that your line is open. Once again, *1, please. And we'll take our first caller. Caller, your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Leslie. I came in a little late, and I'm wondering, I apologize in case you went through this, but will this be, I missed about 20 minutes of it. Will it be rerun, or was it taped that we could maybe access it, or are the slides available?
After, so it's Hubertus Volkmann, after this webinar on the Rx-360 website, you will find the slides and also an audio tape of this webinar.
Perfect.
And we'll take our next question.
Good morning. My name is Stella. Does our company qualify any potential service provider? Is Rx-360 available for an audit?
Stella, this is Darcy. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Our company needs to qualify any potential service provider, which Rx-360 would be. Would Rx-360 be available for an audit?
So that's a good question. I actually I do not know off the top of my head. Dee Dee, do you happen to know if
No.
Rx-360 is open to being audited?
I don't think that's ever come up before.
Okay. So maybe it's something that we can follow up on, and then, you know, if it's possible, Stella, if you want to send me an email at you know, the email address that's at the back of the slides. Again, Darcy Ewalt, but the email address is darcy_hardell@merck.com. I'm happy to follow up and get a response to that question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Once again, *1 for a question or comment over the phone. And no further questions over the phone. And actually, we just have a few more come in. Caller, your line is open. Caller, your...
I'm sorry, this is Jana. I was just curious how the regulatory agencies are in accepting these as supplier audits for qualification.
Yeah, so it's a good question. We, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure that any of the member companies have had specific discussions about Rx-360 audits, but certainly, you know, I'm aware that there's at least a couple of agencies that are observers to Rx-360, so they're absolutely aware of what we're doing and how we're sharing audits and conducting audits jointly. We have the right procedures in place. You know, the site or the members have procedures that really, you know, govern how they use Rx-360. So I don't envision that there would be any problem. And I think the other thing, you know, just to mention is, you know, certainly something that we're seeing from the agency perspective as well, is they know that they're not able to cover and audit all of the manufacturers or API manufacturers that are across the globe. And so we're seeing increased kind of sharing of responsibility from the agency perspective. That's what we're doing, you know, in the pharmaceutical arena. And like I said, there's absolute awareness and participation from some of the key agencies worldwide in the observer teleconferences that we have, so they're well aware of the programs that we have available.
Thank you.
So we'll take our next question.
I have a question. In regards to the agency audit, should a question arise during the inspection, what type of support can we expect from Rx-360?
Yeah, so as the audit operations group, that's one of the things that we're starting to work through is making sure that we have, inspection readiness, if you will. I do know at least the teleconferences that we've been on discussing, inspection preparedness. Rx-360 is fully supportive to provide any information or questions that may come up during an inspection. So I think it's a matter of us just refining the requirements and understanding what the potential questions could be. For example, database validation or how they actually do the bid or what have you for the audit. The auditors. So it's something that the working group is still putting in place just to make sure that we have very clearly defined, these are the potential questions that could come from an agency. This is what is expected for the member company to resolve really without involvement from Rx-360, and here are some of the questions and or documentation that could be requested of Rx-360. I will say that, with the database that is available, all of the information, the audit guide, the CVs for the auditors, the audit reports, it's all available on the website. So as far as accessibility to information, it's quite easy for a member company to pull the information that they might need as well.
How are the audit plans determined?
How are the audit plans determined? So what happens is a member company can request to be a sponsor for an audit. And as a member company, I can say that I am willing to be the only sponsor for that audit, or I might want, one or two other sponsor companies to be involved in the audit. So once that threshold is reached, then the audit would move forward with Rx-360. So again, for example, if I say that I want to audit supplier A and I want to have two other member companies, sponsor the audit for a total of 3, once we get those 3 sponsor companies identified and participating, the audit would then moved forward and the coordinator would start to work with the supplier to secure an audit date. The member companies are encouraged to reach out to the supplier beforehand so that they're not surprised at the request for a third-party auditing firm to perform the audit on their behalf and to really try to get that buy-in and sponsorship from the supplier. As far as the audit plan, that's all of the different member companies are able to put in really as few or as many requests for audit as meets the needs of their particular audit plan. So again, last year we had what was called a Top 100 initiative where the members looked at their top 100 suppliers or at audits that were going to be required in 2013 and tried to really synergize the audit requirements or the audit plan for 2013. But really what happens, I would say most often is sponsors are putting in their requests, and when you reach that threshold for the number of sponsors per supplier, then that moves forward into the audit program. I've known some cases where, membership companies have either delayed their audit, according to their procedures with the appropriate justification so that they can realize the benefit of using an Rx-360 joint audit. And then there are some other member companies who are actually accelerating their audit, so again, they can realize the benefits of the audit program. And so, there are some suppliers who are a little bit uncertain about, if I'll use our company as an example, Merck was just here, last year, 2 years ago, why are they coming back? And it's really so that we can, kind of get on the same schedule, if you will, from a pharmaceutical company perspective.
How are the auditors selected and how are they qualified?
So the auditors, so there was a slide in the deck. The auditors are selected. We have minimum requirements that we have outlined for auditors. There's a one-page sheet that's available on the website or in the database. So there are minimum requirements. They have to, have audit experience. They have to be qualified by a recognized, industries such as CQA, Certified Quality Auditor, that's in the United States. They have to have done the particular type of audit, I think it's at least 3 times, in that year in order to be eligible for, doing an Rx-360 audit. So again, there are specific requirements that Rx-360 member companies have outlined. When a new audit firm is interested in doing audits on behalf of Rx-360, they can submit a request to the Rx-360 database. And then as audits are available for particular auditing suppliers, there's a notice that's sent out. They can provide bids as far as the cost goes, and then the information related to that specific person or that group is provided to the audit operations group. We have 2 individuals who review the credentials, review the information, make sure it meets the minimum requirements that we have set out, and then those individuals are eligible for performing audits. They also, are trained on the program, the Rx-360 program. And then, for each audit, the member companies who pay for that audit are eligible, not eligible, but they see not just the audit report, but they have a copy of the auditor's CV, and then obviously the responses and other information as it relates to that particular audit.
I have a question in regards to SCARs. After there is a joint report and there's issues that are found, is SCARs issued by the individual company, or is that something that's joint as well?
You're saying SCARs?
Yes, supplier corrective action.
Oh, okay. Yep, I'm sorry. So what happens is the auditor provides the audit report, including the observations to each of the member companies. So each member company or sponsor has the ability to review not just the audit report, but also the audit observations and seek any clarification that might be needed from the auditor before the report is finalized. The auditor then does submit the observations to the supplier, and then the supplier provides the corrective actions back to the auditor. Right now, the auditor has the responsibility to either approve or reject the responses. The responses are then available to each of the member companies, but certainly during an Rx-360 audit, we communicate with the supplier to say, if there are any unresolved issues or a response doesn't necessarily meet a member company expectation, that individual sponsor or member company can get back in touch with the supplier to seek, additional information or some type of supplemental CAPA. So again, the auditor does request the CAPAs, the auditor receives the CAPA proposal, they're responsible for approving it, but there certainly can and there's expected to be involvement and follow-up by the individual sponsor companies if additional information is needed from the supplier.
Anything further?
Excuse me, this is Iris. I have a question about proprietary information. As we audit supplier, we usually go by our own contact information. So since we're sharing all this information, how do we protect that in our company's interest?
Right. So when in the database that we have today, I personally have no visibility to what other companies are requesting an audit, and that really is carried all the way through to the end of the audit. I think if there is some specific proprietary information that's reviewed during an audit and needs to be included in an audit report, then that particular piece can be redacted or only shared with that sponsor during the review process. But like I said, from a database perspective, and the reason that we use the coordinator at Rx-360 is the requests go to the coordinator, we only have visibility that there are other sponsor companies, but we don't have visibility to who those sponsor companies are, what materials necessarily they're asking to have audited, and like I said, if there are specific, pieces of information that need to be followed up on at a supplier that are confidential, then there has to be that discussion with the auditor and with the Rx-360 coordinator to make sure during the review process, that is kept confidential and, potentially not available. There could be a one-page summary or document that's written that's specific to that particular supplier. I'm sorry, that particular sponsor company. And in the audit report as well, there's no mention of the firms that were involved in the audit. It's just strictly just to focus on here are the materials that were audited and the specific audit requirements that we would have.
Caller, anything else? Hearing no response, we'll move on to our next question. Paula, your line is open.
Yeah, are you finding that other companies, in addition to Amgen, are waiving the responsibility or the requirement for additional audits by the individual company if Rx-360 does the audit?
Yes, I think, it's really, it's company dependent. Certainly if Rx-360 has performed the audit, then, even though they say they waive it, they would still be, responsible to get a copy of the audit report and pay for a copy of the audit report. But I do know some situations where, companies might have a particular supplier on an audit plan. The supplier might, say to the company, we just had an audit by Rx-360. Would you be open to using that in lieu of a new audit? And companies have actually done that. So they paid for the Rx-360 audit in lieu of having their own company perform the audit.
Thank you.
We'll take our next question. Paula, your line is open. Once again, caller, your line is open. Hearing no response, we'll move on. There's no further questions over the phone at this time.
Okay, since there aren't any more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up, and we'll send out an email to everybody to let you know that the slides and the audio have been posted on the website. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of the presenters or send a question to the Rx-360 Secretariat.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude today's conference. Thank you for joining.